Today, to earn my place in this crowded world, I'm reviewing Utopia, a new Prime original series, which is based on a 2013 BBC Four series of the same name. And I've often seen that series listed as one of the best series that you've probably never seen. And I concur with that assessment and would highly recommend you check out that series. As to this series, I feel like it may not be worth your time. But rather than go into an ad nauseum comparison of these two series and what made the first one better, I'm going to simply attempt to tell you what is good and bad about this series. Now, in case you watched a trailer and were confused or have no idea what this is about, essentially it's the story of this group of individuals who are obsessed with this comic book called Dystopia, which seemingly has predicted numerous real life catastrophic events, including pandemics. And they go to this comic convention to try and purchase the sequel to this comic. But little do they know they're about to be brought into the orbit of two assassins who are seeking to kill everyone who has laid eyes on this new comic because it contains a mystery that they don't want people to know. How these stories intersect with the story of Dr. Kevin Christie, played by John Cusack, the owner of a company that is manufacturing a synthetic food that they're trying to use to help poor communities, and the story of Michael Stearns, who believes that he has a vaccine that may be able to help end a outbreak of the flu. How all these stories intersect, I'm going to let you discover for yourself, because I think that's where the interest comes from in this show. If you're someone who likes conspiracy theory thrillers, this might be up your alley. It does have a lot of interesting ethical questions that it raises. It has some moments that are very, very thrilling and shocking. And it has overall a lot of mysteries, and the story isn't terrible. But that said, I felt like the narrative kind of took a long time to coalesce into something where you could understand what was going on and were invested in it. And surprisingly, given that the writer is Gillian Flynn, who is a very good writer of books including Sharp Objects and Gone Girl, I felt that the writers, including her, seemed to have made a lot of decisions that were just intended to shock the viewer without really anticipating what the fallout from those decisions would be and how they would use that to influence the shape of the story. I feel like a lot of decisions, there was one in episode 2 at the end of the episode in particular involving the character of Jessica Hyde, played by Sasha Lane, who claims to be the real life version of a character in the comics who is seeking answers to her own mystery. I feel like the act that she committed at the end of the second episode, they didn't really examine the repercussions from it enough, and I don't think they thought through having the character do this. Now, Sasha Lane, I think, is probably the most interesting performer in this show. The other characters in the group, Becky, Ian, Grant, Samantha, and Wilson, played by Desmond Borges from You're the Worst, they're fine, but they kind of feel like sitcom level characters. They don't feel like the type of characters that anyone would invest too heavily in. And, Dr. Kevin Christie, played by John Cusack. John Cusack's a great actor. I've enjoyed him for most of his career, but I kind of feel like he's doing what a lot of actors do when they move from films to prestige television after their career has kind of waned. And I feel like he's just kind of sleepwalking through this role. And I feel like Rainn Wilson manages to make an impression, which is more than I can say for a lot of the characters in this show. But it basically feels like he's playing a variation of the character that he always plays, and it's just basically a scientific version of that character. The most interesting character in the original series is kind of the most interesting character here, and that's Arby, played here by Christopher Denham, who is this assassin with apparently no remorse as he commits horrible, horrible acts. If you're triggered by shootings and other types of violence, including torture, you might not want to watch this because it goes pretty far with his character, and then shockingly starts to seek to humanize him. So you might not like that. It adds some complexity, and this is one of those series where the quote unquote villains view themselves as heroes, and once you find out the motivation for what they're seeking to accomplish and the overall goals that they have, I think that you will appreciate that this is a very complex story with interesting discussions going on. But overall, to me, I just feel that it felt bloated, particularly in the first episode, which took way too long to get to the inciting incident, but it didn't get much better from there on out. I just feel like the narrative feels a lot slacker than it should. And I worry a little bit that this will give people in the real world ammunition for not vaccinating. But I've come to the conclusion if you're the sort of person that wasn't going to vaccinate in the first place, you probably aren't going to have your minds changed by this. And vice versa. I don't think that this is going to change people's minds one way or the other, although I feel like there's definitely reason to be concerned if you watch this. They even reference the SARS virus that initially happened in China. Now, this was based pretty closely on the BBC miniseries, which has similar plot threads, and Gillian Flynn started writing the script in 2014. So I don't think this is intentional. I don't think it's trying to exploit a pandemic, and I wouldn't have them change what they've written for the series based on real life events. But it's just something to be aware of as you go into it, that it could be a little too close to home for some of you. So overall, I don't really recommend this. I just think that there are better thrillers out there. And overall, I just don't think that the writers had enough clarity of vision. I think this is kind of messy, and a lot of the themes aren't developed adequately or in a clear enough fashion. There's one thing in particular that struck me as I was watching this. They really, really botched the introduction of Jessica Hyde's character here compared to the original BBC series. And I said I wouldn't really compare this to that one, but that moment in particular just exemplified to me how this was falling short of its goals for itself as a thriller. And judging it by its own merits, I just feel that it didn't hold my interest as well as it should have, considering all the carnage and horrors unfolding on screen. So overall, I don't really recommend this, but if you're interested and if you end up checking it out, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you're interested in seeing more reviews like this one, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you give me a like, I'd really appreciate it. And as always, you can watch more videos right now.